Hey there. I'm going to get started with the live stream, even though there aren't any watchers, just so I can get this going. And this will get posted up as a playable video after the stream is done anyway. So today, Fabfilter released their update to Pro-L. And there was a lot of discussion about it, of course. Everybody's excited because Fabfilter does such great stuff. One of the limitations of the first version of Pro-L was that it didn't really do true peak limiting. It did have some kind of ability to mitigate ISPs, but it didn't do a very good job of actually preventing them. So one of the things we were hoping for with Pro-L2 was that it would bring us true peak limiting. So that's kind of where I started, and I posted some analyses mostly on Facebook in the mastering group here. I think it's the Mastering Engineers Worldwide group. And these screenshots you see here were ones that I took where I ran various signals through Pro-L2 just to see how it would do in terms of true peak limiting. And I got kind of disappointing results. I know it's hard to see, but basically here, this tool that I use to check for ISPs and overshoots is showing that there's overshoots. So I shared this information on Facebook in the Mastering Engineers Worldwide group, and there was some discussion about it. Nothing major, just people basically saying, yeah, well, there you go. But over on KVR, there was a little bit more of a heated discussion about it. Some people were skeptical of the tool I was using to measure the overshoots. I think what happens is there's we want to believe that the plugins that we're using are just amazing, and when there's deficiencies in them, we're not so easy to accept that. So in any case, whether or not the tool I'm using is a problem, I don't know. So let me just show you what my methodology is here. I just have these 3 tracks. It's just IK Multimedia's Moto Bass in demo mode, because I'm still evaluating whether I want to buy it. And there's Microtonic from Sonic Charge that I'm using for drums, which is here. And there's a bit of a kind of percussion-y bass line with Rob Papin sub boom bass, and I'm using a pad with Korg's Wave Station. And it's not meant to be anything amazing. It's just to get some signal to play with the limiters. So anyway, here, this is what it sounds like. So the point here was I wanted to get kind of a good full sound. I wanted some nice transients. I wanted some dynamic range to be used so that we can hear what's going on and see what's going on with these limiters. So the tool that I mainly use for checking overshoots and ISPs is a tool from Apple. This is part of their mastering for iTunes software. Now, I don't know what's going on in behind the scenes. I don't have any technical information on it. I don't know what methodology it uses to check for ISPs. It is a very good tool. It allows you to listen to your source as well as running it in real time through an encoder, and you can switch back and forth between those two and monitor in real time. And down here it shows you peak metering for the source and peak metering for the encoder you have set up. So the source would be the the PCM signal out of the DAW that's going into this, and the encoder part is what's coming out of the encoder. So I usually set the encoder to a 128K compressed stream, because this is usually kind of the worst case scenario, unless you're getting into data bandwidth limitations. So basically this shows you regular peaks, if you will, like true peak, 0 dB true peaks on the source and on the encoded, as well as any intersample peaks, and kind of where you're peaking out. And then this shows you clips. So if you get any clips, these are counters for sample and intersample clips, left, right channel, both on source and encode. So that will count up and show you every time that there's a clip, it will count it. So not only do you get to see if there's a clip occurring, but you also get to see the frequency of those clips. And for lack of a better term, I don't know, it's kind of like the velocity of the clips, how many clips per given unit time. So I'll just run this, and I think what I'll do is I've got the 4 tracks going into these buses, just in case I want to, their buses are in serial, just in case I want to put various plugins on them. So I'm going to put a gain on it before it hits any of the limiters or meters. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the track, and then I'm just going to increase the gain, and you can see how the clipping meters function. So you can see that's bad news. There's lots of clipping going on. Really what I like to achieve is I want to see 0 red over on the source, and I want to see a minimal amount of red over on the encode. I'm okay with some occasional clipping occurring. I tend to master so that my uncompressed masters are of the best quality. I try not to push the loudness too hard, so I know a lot of people still, they want to get loud. I don't bother with that. I try to target -16 LUFS. I find that gives me the best quality sound, which is what I'm aiming for typically. And since I'm generally mastering my own work, that's what I want. As a client of myself, that's what I want. I want the best quality. I'm perfectly happy having things be a little bit quieter, as long as I'm getting the most amount of dynamic range, or PLR. So in any case, you can see without a limiter on this, we're getting major problems. So I'll reset that. I'll turn the gain off. And then we can take a look at, why don't we just go right into Pro-L2 here. So what I'm going to do is we'll set this up. I'll put it on transparent, give it some look ahead, 0 attack, a little bit of release. I'm starting with 0 attack because I want to catch all the transients to start with. You can see I have true peak limiting on. I have oversampling set to 8x, which is pretty high. You mainly would probably use it at 1x, but 2x or 4x, but I'm going to put it on 8x. In any case, we'll just run this through this limiter. I'll increase the gain, and let's watch what happens here in the peaks. Right. The thing is, I have the 1-to-1 on. I've also turned the DC filter on. So what was happening, the reason why we weren't getting any peaks was because I had the one-to-one feature on the output on, and what that does is it essentially maintains the same loudness as you increase the gain, so you don't actually get any extra loudness, but it does let you hear what the limiter is doing. And I was playing with this a little earlier, so I forgot to turn that off. All right, so now we'll get some gain happening. Okay, so you see that we're getting intersample peaks or clips occurring. So that's not good, because that's not what we were hoping for with Pro-L2. So again, I don't know all the DSP stuff in these things, but I'm gathering that managing intersample peaks effectively is very difficult to do. Let me show you a limiter that does a good job of intersample peaks. Just to show an example of that, but also so we can see what this meter does. That's Nugen's ISL2. So here's ISL2, and I have no gain, I have no ceiling. I can I'll turn the channel link down to 0. What the hell? And there's a millisecond of look ahead. So I'll turn the gain up as we're listening here, and then take a look at how ISL2 does. Now that's pretty aggressive. I don't have a loudness meter on right now. I suppose I can turn one on so that we can see what the loudness is doing. I like to use Nugen's loudness meter. And I'll talk about this meter in a little bit as well, because it has some peak metering, codec peak metering, which is useful. Put it over there. So this is pretty aggressive, of course. Let's see what... oh, and the other thing I want to do is I want to put something in here to let me lower the volume so I don't have to keep stopping it. Boy, you can see I have a lot of plugins. I'm not sure. I wonder if HOFA's meter has a dim. I would hope it would have a dim. You'd think it would have a dim. Does it have a dim? Doesn't have a dim. It has a mute. Okay, that might work. Let's see. Okay, that completely mutes it. Well, that's fine. I was hoping for a dim, but I'll take a mute. Okay, and this is also another meter that people cite as being good for checking ISPs. And you can see I have the ISP on here. I've reset the meters, so let's take it out of mute. So you can see we're getting an overshoot. I'm not sure why the left channel is so low, but in any case, you could also see we were like pushing -9 LUFS. So that's pretty aggressive. You can see the meters going here. I can put it into like a real-time mode. But you'll notice that, well, we do have one clip. In all of that, we have one clip over on the source. Tons of clipping going on over here. maybe what I'll do is I'll put the HOFA meter at the end, and then that way everything will still run through our meters while I talk, because I don't have the ability to duck with the way I have things set up here. All right. So anyway, there you can see Nugen ISL2. You can see that it is essentially a true peak limiter according to this tool. Let's see what happens with the HOFA. Okay, so the HOFA is showing some overshoot here on the right channel, which is weird, and this is -3. I do not know why that is, because I'm not really seeing any imbalance. No worries, we're just going to carry on here. So I will turn this off. Let's go back to Pro-L. Now, of course, if you give Pro-L a bit of ceiling, and you would generally master, if you're going to master, you're going to master with some amount of ceiling. I know a lot of people will even go down to -1 and leave a whole dB for ceiling. I've done a lot of experimenting with this, and I find that -5 is usually good enough. I'll typically use -6 to -8 if I really want to be careful. I kind of don't care about that last dB, but I do want to push it as much as I can. But anyway, if we give Pro-L, let's say we were to give it just -2, and let's see how it will perform. I suppose we should turn it on. I'll bring the gain down. Turn it on. And then I'll bring the gain, start bringing the gain up. I'll bring the gain up until we get our peaks at around the ceiling. There we go. There we go. Okay. So we're pushing about -10 LUFS. -12 on the Nugen meter. We're definitely maxing out here. You can see some limited clipping going on the 128K stream. So you see, if you give Pro-L2 a little bit of a ceiling, what if we were to just drop it down to 0.1? Bear with me here. Over here. Might as well reset this. Just make sure we're going to hit our 0.1s. We do. See? So no clips. So as long as you give Pro-L2 0.1 dB of ceiling, then you can see that it's not creating intersample clips. That may be an indication that if you don't give Pro-L any ceiling and it starts to clip, okay, so you can see we're hitting our full scale, and we're still not getting any clips over here, so that's good. And it only happens when you really push this. See, now we're starting to get kind of a stream here of clipping. It's not too major, you know. We get a clip every once in a while. I mean, that's not too bad. That's probably not going to be audible. You can see we're going crazy over here on the 128K stream. So if we look at the Nugen meter, the Nugen meter allows you to set, it has I'll just walk through it here a little bit. So it has a loudness metering here. It has PLR over here. PLR is peak loudness ratio. It's a measure of, quote, dynamic range, unquote. It's not really dynamic range, but it's a measure of essentially the depth, if you will, between your peaks and I guess where the bulk of your loudness is. It's a measure of, in a sense, dynamic range. It works like dynamic range in that the higher you push the loudness, the less PLR you get. I have my meter set up, like I said, I like to target -16, so I have the green around -16. But what you can do with Mastercheck Pro is you can set up different codecs with different bit rates, and you can monitor them, but it'll also show you when it throws clips. So all of these are clipping right now. So if I hit reset, see they immediately go into clipping. So we're definitely getting clips out, and of course our metering over here is telling us why. These are set up, well, I can show you what they are. So download is an AAC at 256. So that's still a compressed format, but at 256. High quality is at AAC at 192. Medium is an AAC at 128. So medium here is essentially what we're monitoring over here in the Apple tool. Then low quality drops down to 48. Poor connection, VBR. So if we bring this to a more reasonable loudness level, you know, most people aren't going to do what I do and target -16. Most people are probably going to target like -12 to -10. -14 is kind of becoming the target for streaming. A lot of streaming services are normalizing to -14. So that might be, so at -14 we're not really getting any limiter action. And so of course we're not going to get anything on these meters. And over here on the Nugen, if we take a look at the way those codecs are performing, of course they're fine too. So let's pump it up. Again, it's all source dependent, of course, you know, like depends on what your peaks are. So here we're getting a little bit of limiting action. This is way louder than I would work with this. With audio, I wouldn't master at this, but it'll still sound okay. Let's see what our PLR is at. Our PLR is in the double digits. So yeah, okay, you know, this wouldn't be too bad, but here I'll unmute. And I see why the HOFA meter is like unbalanced here. It's because the trim on the left is at -3. I think I had this set up and I set it as the default. I should probably reset that. Okay, so that's why we're getting that problem there. Okay, so you can see that. Sorry about that. You can see that the Nugen codecs basically all failed. Now, one of the things I don't like about the Nugen tool, the Mastercheck Pro, is it shows you, they go red as soon as there's a clip. Okay, so fine, you might get one clip. That's not a big deal. What you might get a clip every every second. If you get a clip every second, again, it's probably not going to be audible. You might get a little bit of kind of fuzz in your audio, but it's not really going to be audible. So the Mastercheck Pro doesn't give you a sense of how much clipping is going on. It just goes red when you get a clip. So that's why I like to use this tool, because this lets you watch the clipping as it occurs. Right, and see, we're not getting any clipping over here on the uncompressed render. Okay, so out of curiosity, let's take a look at a very popular and revered limiter. We'll take a look at DMG's Limitless. Okay, so got everything flat. This is a multi-band limiter. I've got everything flat. I'll put the ceiling at 0, the threshold at 0. It also has this display down here where you can manipulate the parameters within each of the bands. I'm just going to hide that because we just got everything kind of just set at defaults or whatever. And in the settings, there's this intersample peak filter, this ITU filter, and it's set to on. And from what I understand, I actually don't know what an ITU filter is. I tried to research it to find out, and I couldn't find anything. So I couldn't really find anything that tells me what it is in detail. But what I did find is that there are some problems with the ITU filter in Limitless. It tends to cause really big, fast excursions in the bands and the limiting. Now, whether or not that's just a visual thing that occurs or whether it's an audible thing that occurs, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I see these giant, like 20 dB gain reductions when I have ITU on, and I'm not really hearing it. So I don't know if they're occurring so fast that I'm not really hearing it, or if it's just a visual thing. DMG is aware of the problem, and they're apparently going to fix it. So let's turn. That was annoying. Let's turn it off. Okay, so I have it off. Let's reset all of our meters here. Okay. We can hide ISL2. All right. So now we're just in essentially unity gain. Okay, I'm going to do that. Hopefully my voice will register. Have the music playing a little bit in the background. Okay, so hopefully my voice will register still over this. I just didn't like the dead air over everything and having to like go full tilt back and forth. So you can see here we have about 3 dB of headroom, 2 dB of headroom. So I have ceiling set at 0, and remember I have the ITU meter off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start boosting the threshold and get some limiting going on here. What we'll do is we'll also go into this time view, which is similar to what we have the other limiters that show you when where your limiting is occurring. All right. So you can see we have some problems already. What's our loudness at? It's pretty aggressive, you know, we're at -8. This is LKFS. I think there's LUFS. No offense, Bob. Yeah, you can see the Nugen codecs are reading out. You can see we're getting intersample peaks on our source. So that's not good. Now, again, this is pretty aggressive, although, you know, there's a lot of music out there that's still being mastered at these crazy loudness levels. I've even seen like -6 sustained. It's ridiculous. So this is not, you know, in terms of like operating within the loudness wars, -9 LUFS, that's not too bad. But Limitless, you can see, fails. And you can see I have ISP on. So what we have to do to make this work is turn this ITU filter on. And we'll reset everything here. Yep, so Nugen read it out. No problem, no problem. I mean, again, we're still pushing things pretty hard, and these are codecs after all. This is the main concern for me. I mean, you're gonna get degradation of audio in a stream anyway. So if you have the occasional clip, intersample clip, it's no big deal. People aren't gonna hear that. But you can see it's not doing too bad over here on the source. So what if we bring this down to a more reasonable loudness level? Okay. So there's around -12. Let's see how the codecs do with that. And we'll reset over here. So not too bad. Oh, I spoke too soon. But again, you can see over here in the 128K stream, it's not too bad. You know, it's throwing some clips occasionally. Let's reset it. Now again, do you trust the Apple tool? I mean, yeah, okay, you may not like the fact that Pro-L2 is not showing itself to be a true peak limiter in the strictest sense of the words. But this Apple tool, RoundTrip, is designed to measure intersample peaks, and they've designed it so that for us as engineers to ensure that our audio plays at the highest quality on their music platform. So you'd think that they would have some strictness in there. So let's assume that it's not strictly measuring ISPs, that it's loosely measuring ISPs. You would then assume that it wouldn't show you ISPs as much as they're occurring. No matter how you cut it, unless there's a better meter out there, I have to say that it's unfortunate, but Pro-L2, here, let's go back to Pro-L2 since I'm chatting about it. So I just wanted to show you this about Limitless, where you have to have that ITU meter on to get anywhere near being a true peak limiter. And it, you know, it generally speaking is. Okay, if it's going to throw the occasional intersample peak, I'm willing to concede and call it a true peak limiter. So here's Limitless. We're at -12. Plenty loud. Here, I'll reset the HOFA. The other meter that I use as well, that I've been playing with, is this one by TBProAudio. Where will I put that? I guess I'll just put that there. This has some pretty good metrics as well. Loudness. But here's the true peak. So you can see it's a positive number, so there is some overshoot, but it's not major. Okay, so let's go back to Pro-L2. Okay. Reset all of our meters. I don't know what is going on with the Nugen meter. We're getting a little bit of limiting occurring. So, you know, in terms of mastering, this is what you might see. And again, we're at minus 12 or ish. So I think that's too loud. But in any case, now, oddly, we're not having any problems here on the source. I do not know why this happens sometimes with Logic. Throws my windows everywhere. Yeah, I'm not sure why this is occurring. Because remember before we saw, let me see. Oh, I know why. It's because we're not pushing it that hard, right? If we go and we push it hard, right? Right. Now we're starting to see intersample clipping on the source. But this is crazy, but it's not that crazy. Like I said, I have commercial recordings that are pumped up to this level of loudness. So there you go. You can't call Pro-L2 a true peak limiter. Now, let's, oh well, no problem. I'm gonna go back to, remember we experimented with some ceiling. I gave it 0.1 dB of ceiling, and that seemed to be enough to suppress ISPs. So let's crank it again. Reset, reset, reset. See, so in the strictest sense of the words, it's not a true peak limiter, but with 0.1 dB of ceiling, it doesn't overshoot. Personally, I'm willing to give it a pass and call it you can't call it a true peak limiter. That's the problem. Words matter. So what we'll say is this: it's not a true peak limiter, but with just a minimal amount of ceiling, you could use this for mastering. Let's bring it down to, let's bring it up to where it's just gonna start limiting. Okay. So where it just starts limiting, we're still at around minus 12. But let's see how it performs. And this is with 1 dB of ceiling, so let's take the ceiling away. I'll reset everything again since I made a change. Okay, so that's not too bad PLR. 12 dB LUFS. Our codecs failed. Over here on Nugen, we have a little bit of overshoot. There's that 0.1. You know, at least Fabfilter didn't go and fake that 0.1 dB of overshoot. You know, that shows some honesty. And I would never master, even if I didn't intend to go stream. I would still leave at least half a dB of ceiling in a master. I'm willing to give away that half a dB just for that extra headroom, and in which case Pro-L2 you could definitely master with it. Like, that's nothing. That to me is within the realm of error, perhaps. We're getting decent results out of 128K as well. Again, you see, this is where the Nugen meter becomes kind of pointless. Okay, yeah, it's warned me that I had a clip, but so if I had one clip, who cares? And who knows, right? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows with these things? You know, we can only use the tools that we have. HOFA is not showing any overshoot. All right, so why don't we play around with some other limiters now that we have this set up and we've ascertained how things are working here. So we looked at ISL2. And just so you don't think that your eyes were deceiving you, here's ISL2. We've got it pretty pumped. Let's see what our loudness is. You know, minus 7, 8. So let's reset all of our meters. No ceiling. This is where you set the ceiling. No ceiling. So it's showing that there was a clip. There's showing some overshoot on HOFA. The Apple tool is showing no clipping on the source, and as you'd expect, a fair amount of clipping on the stream. And DP meter is showing a little bit of overshoot. All right, so let's take a look at some other limiters. Let's take a look at the original Pro-L. Let's see how it performs. Give it a little bit of look ahead. Transparent. No attack. Medium release. No channel linking. Oversampling is on 4. We'll start with no ceiling, and you can see here I have the ISP detector on, and then we'll just pump. Let me reset all of our meters. All right, so now we'll pump the gain. And you can see here, so we're around that minus 7, minus 8 that we were playing with before. We got lots of limiting going on. Overshoot is quite positive. And you can see we have a constant stream of intersample peaks. So this is where the original Pro-L was a disappointment, because it's not really a true peak limiter. I think what was bothersome was that it had this ISP feature, and so we naturally figured that it was a true peak limiter. But even in the manual they say turn that on, turn oversampling on, and hold your nose. So one last limiter we'll look at. I'll tell you, I won't bother opening them up right now, but I did also test Ozone 7 maximizer and Ozone 8 maximizer. Ozone 7 maximizer was definitely throwing a lot of clips, so we can't call it true peak. But Ozone 8 was acting essentially like the Nugen, and it was not throwing any clips on the source. So I would say that the Ozone 8 maximizer is true peak. Now here's a limiter, to be honest, I have never used. I recently upgraded to the new IK Multimedia T-Rax 5 plugins. I had a few of them, T-Rax 4, and I decided to just get the whole kit and caboodle, the max, when 5 came out. So I haven't actually ever opened up the T-Rax Stealth limiter. I've never seen it before. I've never opened it up. So, but I know a lot of people really like it, so let's see how it does. Okay, so let's start out with no ceiling. It has a unity gain monitor, that's nice. Okay, we have it on oversampling, no dither. I like to, for these kind of tests, I like to use a natural setting, so I'm not sure what the settings are, but I will assume balanced. Why can I not get it on that? There. Okay. All right, so let's pump up the volume and see. If you like the HOFA meter, watch the HOFA meter. If you like the Nugen meter, watch the Nugen meter. If you like the DP meter, then watch the DP meter. I'll reset them all. Okay. So the native non-boosted loudness of this is like -17, which is only 1 dB quieter than my usual target, just to give you a sense of how low I tend to master to. So anyway, I'll pump up the volume here, and I'm going to watch here because I like to use the Apple meter, but you guys can use whatever meter you want to use that I have. Yeah, that's not looking good. -9 LUFS, and we're getting a stream of ISPs on the source. I assume this is oversampling. Ooh. Definitely something funky with the UI. Yeah, now I'm on a 12 core. I'm on a 3 gigahertz 12 core Mac Pro. So sorry, but yeah, so it's not a true peak limiter. I don't see any other settings. Intersample peak limiter. Okay, it says it's an intersample peak limiter. Well, granted, I've never used it before. If there's something else going on that I can use to, but I believe that I have it set correctly and we're getting intersample peaks. So I don't understand how companies can do that. Okay, so let's find out what kind of a ceiling we have to give it in order to prevent the intersample peaks on the source. Let's try the -1 dB. Now that looks promising. Okay, so there you go. Just like Pro-L2, you have to set just that minimal -0.1 ceiling, and it looks like that will mitigate your intersample peaks. So like I said, it's not really a true peak limiter, but with the necessity of only a minus 0.1 dB ceiling in order to suppress ISPs. Here, I'll show you again. So ceiling at 0, and we'll pump it up. And you can see here, we're throwing an ISP stream at minus 8 LUFS. So not true peak. It's just not true peak. However, if we set a ceiling of 0.1, that pretty much solves our ISP issue. Still pushing them out a little bit. Obviously, there you go. So you might need to give it, what if we were to give it 0.3, just to be generous? Reset our meters. So we're hitting our ceiling, and we're not getting any ISPs. So for all practical purposes, I'll go back to ISL2. Not ISL2, sorry, Pro-L2, because you know that's the limiter of interest today. So I would say that for all practical purposes, you can use Pro-L2 as a mastering limiter. Just make sure to set a ceiling of at least minus 0.1 dB, and you'll mitigate ISPs. Let me set that up. Oh, come on. Doesn't have to be exact. There we go. All right. So I'm going to pump it up. Minus 9. So you see, we're not getting any overshoot. Right on the button. So, for Pro-L2 and IK Stealth limiter, they're not strictly true peak limiters, but if you give them 0.1 to 0.2 dB of ceiling, that'll suppress your ISPs. Nugen ISL2 is definitely a true peak limiter. Limitless is definitely a true peak limiter if you turn the ITU filter on. And although we didn't take a look at them, Ozone 7 Maximizer is not a true peak limiter, and Ozone 8 Maximizer is a true peak limiter. So our true peak limiters are Ozone 8 Maximizer, ISL2 from Nugen, and Limitless from DMG. And our not quite true peak limiters that we looked at are Pro-L2 and IK Stealth limiter. And the original Pro-L is definitely not a true peak limiter in any sense of the word. So I hope that helps. I know, you know, there was some discussion about the metering that I was using here to measure ISPs. There's some skepticism about this Apple tool. I don't know why you would be skeptical of it. It's designed to measure ISPs. Apple wants the best quality, or they want a certain level of quality on their platform. So I don't know why they wouldn't create a tool that would accurately measure these things. It seems to function pretty well, the same as the other tools I have that measure ISPs. So you may still be skeptical of it, but I still think it's the best tool for measuring ISPs because you can actually see the stream of ISPs coming in, and really that's what matters. If you get the occasional ISP, the occasional clip here and there, every once in a while, no big deal. You're not going to hear it. But if you get a stream of them, you're definitely going to hear it. And so far, the Apple RoundTrip tool is the only thing I've been able to find that measures that. And like I said, just to be redundant, it's essentially giving me the same results as these other tools for measuring ISPs. So I'm not sure what to tell you. Just reset everything here and take another look. So of course the codecs failed because, you know, we're pushing -8 LUFS, so of course the codecs are going to fail. Look at on the 128K stream here what we've got. I can also set this to iTunes Plus, I think is 192, I think. Let's see how that performs. Still some clips, but not as bad as the 128K stream. There's a little bit of overshoot on the source. Probably why we have a clip here. So there you go. Hopefully that was useful. So this video will end up showing up on YouTube, and then you can watch it if you missed it, if you want. All right, thanks a lot.